It was another calm morning in Maplewood Estates, where the lawns were perfect, the fences white, and the neighbors suspiciously polite. Alex Carter had just finished his morning coffee and was tightening a few bolts on his black Jeep Wrangler. The vehicle wasn't just any Jeep, it was outfitted for special assignments with the local police task force. Cameras, tracking modules, reinforced panels, even a discreet communications unit under the dashboard. It was officially registered under the department but assigned to Alex for his off-duty work as a civilian mechanic assisting on tactical operations. To him, it was a symbol of trust and responsibility. To everyone else, it was just a mean-looking vehicle that didn't quite fit the neighborhood's charming suburban aesthetic. Especially to Karen Whitfield, the self-appointed queen of the Maplewood Homeowners Association. Karen prided herself on protecting property values, though most people suspected she simply enjoyed bossing others around. Her yard was immaculate, her curtains always drawn just enough to peek outside, and her clipboard was practically glued to her hand. That Saturday, as she walked her tiny white Pomeranian past Alex's house, she stopped dead in her tracks. The Jeep, covered in dust from a recent field run, looked to her like an eyesore from an action movie parked in paradise. The tires were thick, the windows tinted, and the front bumper still bore a dent that made her flinch. "This isn't a military base," she muttered, snapping a photo with her phone. "No wonder our neighborhood ranking dropped last quarter." Within the hour, she sent an email blast to the entire HOA board with the subject line, "Urgent Vehicle Violation, Threat to Neighborhood Standards." The other members responded with the usual half-hearted enthusiasm. Most didn't care, but nobody wanted to be on Karen's bad side. By noon, she was knocking on Alex's door with a printed notice. Alex answered calmly, wiping his hands with a rag. "Morning, Karen," he said, already knowing what was coming. She smiled, the kind of smile that hid a warning. "Mr. Carter, this vehicle of yours, it's not in compliance with HOA regulations. You can't park something so aggressive-looking here." Alex leaned on the doorframe. "It's my property, behind my fence, and it's registered. So unless you're planning to buy it, I'd suggest you leave it alone." Karen's smile stiffened. She walked away muttering, already plotting her next move. Morning arrived crisp and quiet, the kind of morning where even the birds seemed to chirp politely. Alex had left early for a meeting with his police task force liaison, locking the gate to his driveway as usual. The black Jeep gleamed faintly in the sunlight, its tinted windows hiding the sensitive surveillance equipment within. To Alex, the lock on that gate wasn't just about keeping people out, it was about protecting property tied to law enforcement. But to Karen Whitfield, head of the Maplewood Estates HOA, it was a symbol of defiance. All weekend, she'd fumed over Alex's refusal to comply. She'd printed more pages of the HOA handbook than anyone had ever read, highlighting vague phrases like "vehicles must blend aesthetically with community standards." The more she stared at the rulebook, the more she convinced herself that she was right and that Alex was the enemy of neighborhood harmony. By mid-morning, Karen had gathered her loyal allies, Bill and Sandra, two residents who mostly followed her out of fear rather than conviction. She stood before them in her pastel cardigan and oversized sunglasses, gripping a pair of bolt cutters she'd borrowed from her brother. According to Section 5, Subsection B, she announced dramatically, the HOA reserves the right to remove any non-compliant vehicle that disrupts neighborhood appeal. Mr. Carter has been warned. It's time to enforce. Bill hesitated. "Are we allowed to cut the lock?" Karen's voice hardened. "We're protecting community standards, Bill. Sometimes leadership requires courage." And with that, she marched up to Alex's driveway, the bolt cutters gleaming like a sword of justice. With a sharp metallic snap, the lock broke. The gate swung open. Karen felt a rush of triumph, a mix of power and pettiness that made her grin. "Finally," she said, "order is restored." Within an hour, she'd called a local tow company, insisting that the abandoned military-style vehicle be removed immediately. The driver, confused but indifferent, hooked up the Jeep and hauled it away. Karen supervised the entire operation like a general at war, snapping pictures from every angle. As the tow truck disappeared down the street, she turned to Bill and Sandra with smug satisfaction. "See? Sometimes you just have to take action." What Karen didn't realize was that the moment the Jeep's tires left Alex's property, a silent alarm triggered in the police system. At that exact moment, 20 miles away, a red notification appeared on the task force command screen: vehicle in motion, unauthorized activity detected. Karen had no idea she'd just cut through more than a lock. She'd sliced straight into a federal operation. When Alex received the phone call, he was sitting in a small conference room at the precinct, reviewing maintenance reports with two task force officers. His phone buzzed twice before he picked it up. The voice on the other end was tight, professional, and slightly alarmed. "Carter, this is dispatch. Your assigned vehicle, the Black Wrangler, is on the move. GPS shows it left your residence 20 minutes ago. Were you driving it?" Alex froze. "No," he said slowly. "It's locked behind my gate. I've got the keys right here." A pause. Then, "Sir, the vehicle is active. We're tracking it near Oak Ridge towing off Highway 12. For a second, Alex couldn't even process what he was hearing. His mind replayed the last few conversations with Karen, her warnings, her smug insistence about neighborhood rules. A sinking feeling hit his stomach. He stood up abruptly. "You've got to be kidding me. My HOA towed it." Within minutes, the task force room burst into motion. Officers began pulling up live tracking data, and 2 patrol cars were dispatched toward the tow yard. Another officer called the towing company to demand immediate access. Alex grabbed his jacket and keys, muttering, "Karen, what did you do?" Meanwhile, back in Maplewood Estates, Karen was basking in her self-declared victory. She'd just finished her morning tea when she saw flashing lights speeding into the neighborhood. Sirens wailed, echoing off the cul-de-sacs. She frowned, annoyed that someone's emergency was disturbing her peace. The police cruisers pulled directly in front of her house. Neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, whispering. Karen stepped outside, trying to appear calm, clutching her clipboard as if it were a badge of authority. "Good morning, officers," she said with forced politeness. "Is something wrong?" The lead officer didn't smile. "Mrs. Whitfield, we're looking for the individual who authorized the removal of a black Jeep Wrangler from this property." Karen blinked. "Oh, that was me. It violated HOA guidelines. We had it towed this morning." The second officer's expression hardened. "Ma'am, that vehicle is government property belonging to an active police task force. You had no authorization to remove or tamper with it." The color drained from Karen's face. Government property," she stammered. "That can't be right. It was just parked here like some kind of tactical monster." Before she could finish, Alex's pickup truck turned the corner and stopped beside the patrol cars. He stepped out, arms crossed, eyes calm but furious. "Karen," he said evenly, "you didn't just tow my Jeep. You tampered with police equipment." Karen's clipboard slipped from her hands. Around her, whispers spread through the gathering neighbors. The officer's radio crackled with confirmation. The Jeep had been found at the tow yard, and inside were pieces of sensitive law enforcement equipment, still intact but dangerously close to being compromised. The next morning, Maplewood Estates was buzzing like a beehive disturbed. News vans lined the entrance to the neighborhood, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Reporters in crisp jackets whispered into microphones, delivering the unbelievable story: local HOA president faces police inquiry after towing government vehicle. Inside her house, Karen Whitfield sat at her dining table, pale and sleepless. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing at reporters, board members, even a few furious neighbors demanding explanations. The HOA email thread had exploded overnight with messages like, "This is an embarrassment, and you've gone too far this time." Even her loyal supporters, Bill and Sandra, had vanished into silence, terrified of being associated with her. Across the street, Alex watched from his porch with quiet amusement. He'd spent most of the night with the task force officers, filing reports and verifying that none of the sensitive equipment in the Jeep had been compromised. Thankfully, everything was accounted for. The police had already retrieved the vehicle from the tow yard, its evidence containers still sealed. Still, the department wasn't taking the incident lightly. They'd fined the towing company for unauthorized removal of a government-registered asset, but most of the responsibility fell squarely on Karen. By noon, 2 officers knocked on her door once again. Karen opened it hesitantly, her perfect hair slightly disheveled. "Mrs. Whitfield," one officer began, "the investigation has concluded. You won't be charged with a federal offense since no classified material was accessed, but you will be cited for property damage, unlawful towing, and interference with a police operation." Her voice cracked as she asked, "Interference?" "I was just enforcing HOA regulations." The officer gave a weary sigh. "Ma'am, those regulations don't supersede federal law. You're lucky this ended the way it did." Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. The HOA board called an emergency meeting that evening, and the turnout was massive. Dozens of residents filled the clubhouse, their faces grim. When Karen walked in, whispers rippled through the room. The board chair, normally timid in her presence, cleared her throat and spoke firmly. "Due to recent events that have brought public embarrassment and legal consequences to Maplewood Estates, we are voting for immediate removal of Mrs. Whitfield from her position as HOA president." Karen tried to defend herself, rambling about community image and property values, but her words fell flat. The vote was unanimous. She was officially stripped of her title. As she left the meeting, cameras flashed again. A reporter shouted, "Karen, any comment on towing a police vehicle?" She ignored them, clutching her purse and storming to her car. Meanwhile, Alex returned home that night to find his Jeep safely parked behind a brand new reinforced steel gate. He closed it, attached a fresh lock, and smell.